Well, summer is almost here, and we know lots of kids will be heading to the pool. We have author Johnnie Christmas, who is an award winning and best selling graphic novelist, who is here to talk about his latest book that shares the importance of swimming in the Black community. Statistically, we all know that Black children die as a result of drowning more than white children do. And there's even children who are not Black children who aren't as familiar with swimming as white children as well. So he has written a book called Swim Team: Small Waves, Big Changes. And he is here to talk about it. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Now, first, we know that, as we said, a lot of people will be heading to the pool this summer, especially kids. Why do you think it's important to look at the role of swimming in the Black community?
Well, I think it's important because there's been a lack of pools. There is a lack of pools in Black communities, and that's historical. Um, and that affects the way our young people live their entire lives. Black children are, I think, 64% of Black children don't know how to swim. Black children are 8 times more likely to die of drowning in a pool than their white friends. And that has a massive impact on the way one lives their life, carries out, their life. Like I myself, I almost drowned when I was 5, and that had a major impact on how I related to swimming and being around the water, going on boats, all of that. So it's vitally important. It's a matter of life and death.
Yes, it is absolutely. And you're so true about the lack of swimming pools in African American communities. I was fortunate enough to grow up in an area that had a pool, but it was a public pool. Anyone could come in, from anywhere. And most times it was just way too crowded. It was stationed in a park, a large park. And
Mm.
so many times it was just way too crowded. And, the scene was a little bit too crazy and hectic for my mom to, let my brother and I go over there. So we actually never went to it
Mm. Yeah.
because of that. And we didn't actually get introduced to swimming until we went to camp, which was when we were about 7 years old. So, as you said, had it not been for that, we wouldn't know how to swim neither. And it's the same with my children, as well. We live in an area where there is no pool. So I'm glad that you brought that up because a lot of people aren't really aware of that. So thank you for that. Now, you talked about how you almost drowned as a young child. Share more, if you don't mind, share more about that experience and how that inspired the theme that you have with the book.
Sure. Yeah, when I was around 5 years old, we were on a family vacation at St. Thomas, and I to visit family there, and I was around the pool, and I fell in, and my uncle pulled me out of there. But that was so foundational to the way I saw the world and my relation to the pool at such a young age to have that kind of interaction with it, and that was how I met this deep water. It was this immersive, vast space that I was completely powerless in, and that had a profound effect on my life going forward. As a young person, I thought it was a growing up. I didn't know how large the problem was. I thought it was a personal failing. I thought it was just me until I started, um, you know, doing research around this book specifically and started seeing the numbers and started to talk to my other friends when they were asking, hey, what are you working on? I was just like, oh yeah, I'm telling this story. And, tell them about it, tell them about my story. And I tell them about Bree's story, our protagonist in the book. And then they tell me that I'm telling them about their story, that they had a similar situation like that, or that they too knew someone who had a situation like that where there was a drowning or near drowning. It's funny that you mentioned camp. My kid sister is the one of us who knew how to swim as a kid because she went to camp and we didn't. Um, she was in a special school program where she actually got to camp. And so it's funny how so many of these things have echoes, and also in your experience about having a when there is a pool available, sometimes it's just like overcrowded or under poorly maintained or under resourced, so that even if you do have one available, which many people don't, you can't really even access it in a way that's conducive to learning how to swim.
Exactly, correctly, because in smaller communities, the swimming pool, the quote unquote community swimming pool is specifically for that community. Whereas, in the city where I grew up, that pool's for anybody, in the city,
Right?
basically. So yeah,
Do you
that's
mind my
really
asking where you grew up?
St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis. All right.
Yes, and so I grew up in what's considered Midtown St. Louis, and one of the bigger parks, Fairground Park, had a pool in it. It's not operable anymore, but back then it was operable. But just as with the other city parks in the area, which were already far few and in between as it was,
Yeah.
they're for anyone. You pay well, back then it was a quarter. Um, you pay your quarter or your 50 cent and you're allowed to come in. So yeah, like you said, majorly crowded. You may not be familiar with the people, who are there because they're coming from everywhere and you're very
Yeah.
uncomfortable. So there's definitely not an environment to learn to swim in, or even if you do know how to swim as a child, it's definitely not an environment to feel comfortable in as a child, with that much crowd, especially if it's, more older teens and adults
Yeah.
than it is young children. So thank you for bringing that up about your sister, and the how she would have been in the same situation had she not went to camp, because that is definitely my brother and I's experience, as well as many people I know experiences who grew up in our area as well. Now, you talked about the protagonist Bree in your book, in the book Swim Team, and we are, you and I go back and forth right now about these real world issues that are kind of swept under the rug. Tell us, how does Bree in the book learn how to deal with these real world issues?
Sure. So Bree in the book, she comes from Brooklyn with her dad. Her dad gets a new job in this town called Palmetto Shores, Florida. That it's a kind of amalgamation of a few of the Florida towns. I grew up in Miami, Florida, and so Florida has all these interesting towns. So I thought I'd make a town that kind of had all these interesting aspects of Floridian, cities and towns. But in this town of Palmetto Shores, all the like the towns swim crazy, right? They almost went to state championships, and they have a swim team that's really powerful. So everybody's really kind of whipped up. It's everyone loves swimming in this town, like people love college football in Texas or what have you. Like they're really about it. So Bree is this fish out of water. She comes having no experience with swimming, coming with these prepackaged stereotypes that affect even the Black community, that Black people can't swim because she didn't have friends who swim. She didn't have a pool nearby. So to her, it was this stereotype that was reinforced through just the circumstances that she grew up in. So she gets to this town and she feels completely out of the loop. And the only elective available to her is Swim 101. And Bree's a star student. She loves school. And she finds herself in a situation where she's skipping a class, which is just unheard of for her. So to show just how much she's trying to avoid the pool. So we get into a situation where Bree accidentally falls in one day. And then her kind neighbor, Miss Etta, who was once a swim team champ in her day, pulls Bree out of the pool and slowly starts teaching Bree how to swim, little by little, getting her comfortable at first with the water, getting her comfortable with the surroundings, getting her comfortable with her body in the water and how that feels, getting her comfortable with you're not going to get it right away, just little by little. And over time, Bree actually becomes a very competent swimmer. So good, in fact, because she's just learning with Miss Etta. She doesn't realize how good she's getting until she gets back to school and she's forced to do a race, and she's really, really good. She's had this one-on-one training, and she was, all the kind of mental part of it's kind of taken away from her. And she's actually, when she's just focused on swimming, she's actually quite good. She joins the swim team, and then we start this whole second part of the book where it's about competition and making friends and a team gelling together and then competing, learning how to win gracefully and lose with grace as well, and learning those life lessons through sport.
Yes, and one of the main points that really struck a chord with me is as you said, that stereotype that Black people can't swim, and the whole theme surrounding, that the school has a swim team. It touched me a lot because I had no idea that there was a such thing called a swim team for schools. As I said, going to school in the inner city, there was no such thing as a swim
Mhm.
team. I did not learn about swim teams being a thing until my senior year in high school, and that's because I was kind of forced to transfer to a new school, a much larger school that had a swim team. I
Mhm.
didn't know such a thing existed. But at the same time, even though I knew how to swim, I was too scared to try out for that very reason. The entire swim team was white.
Mhm.
And when I kind of peeped into, the tryouts, everyone who was trying out was white. And
Mhm.
so I just kind of turned around and left. So that's why this book really touches my heart a lot, because that happens so much with us, with, in our community, where we know that stereotype, we know we're going to get those side eyes, and that can be very intimidating and very uncomfortable. So Bree, getting in this situation where she finds someone that says, hey, unfortunately she had to fall in, but she gets a person that says, hey, I understand, how you may be feeling, so let me help you along the way. Just a very beautiful story there. And you illustrate it wonderfully with the graphics inside the book. Tell us more about how you address, or what approach you took to address the kind of stereotypes, the systematic racism in the graphic novel format that you did.
The way I approached it was taking it in the very same way that Bree learned how to swim, little by little, piece by piece. I wanted to dismantle that stereotype little by little, piece by piece. So when Bree asks the question to Miss Etta, well, I thought Black people don't know how to swim. Miss Etta counters with, I'm Black and I know how to swim. That's strike one on that. And then when Bree's in, well, why don't I know how to swim? Why can't any of my friends that I grew up with know how to swim? And then Miss Etta takes her little by little through it, saying, you know, Black people have always swam, and from time immemorial. But when we got into when these segregated laws and policies were put in places, and pools were taken away, we didn't have that access to our swimming culture. It was like in the book, I use a motif of a jigsaw puzzle, and if you start taking
Mhm,
pieces out of the jigsaw puzzle,
mhm.
it's no longer a jigsaw puzzle. It doesn't work anymore if you start taking things out. And we know that parents who don't know how to swim are less likely to have children who know how to swim. So you can't pass that lesson along if you don't have it to pass along. So growing up in Florida, where I grew up, there was you couldn't there was one beach that was accessible to Black people, so Black people from all across the country would go to this one beach. There was pools. Like when white flight happened, pools were either shuttered or moved to the white neighborhoods.
Right.
And so all these things in place. And then when Black people even did get access to pools, or try to push back against it or protest, you had the situation in Florida where in 1964 where they poured bleach in the pool, and where Black people were having it was called a swim-in. They were protesting segregation of pools at this hotel. So there was all this pushback that made it very hard for Black people to have access, because there was a concerted effort to keep um, these public swimming areas, making them integrated. So you have this people in the culture, and who swam, who are taken away from that, and then you have a situation where we have to little by little put our jigsaw puzzle back together again. As Miss Etta tells Bree, like, we're gonna get you back in the puzzle. We're gonna reconnect all the pieces little by little, piece by piece. And that it's not her fault. It wasn't. She's a little kid, and she didn't. she doesn't build swimming pools, you know. She
Right.
grew up in a neighborhood that didn't have them. And then
Right.
by the time you even get near one, if you don't have one, you're already, you know, you're a bit older, and now that fear can be very pronounced because it's not like a thing that you did ever since you're like a little baby, and it's like, you know, like the air you breathe. It's this completely alien situation. And if you're not allowed near a beach, a river, a pool, or what have you, and the first time you encounter a pool is you're, you know, like 8, 9, 5 years old in my case, that could be uh, that could be a bad time and a bad way to be introduced to the pool.
Absolutely, I agree. And I'm glad that you brought that up because we know as summer approaches, travel is going to pick up as well. And most families, especially, our Black families, we travel, we go from hotel to hotel and we go to the pool, right? We
Mm-hmm.
take the kids down to the pool or let them go down to the pool. When you have, when you're traveling often throughout the summer months and you're going to different hotels, each pool is different, which means that each environment is different.
Yes.
So when you have a young child, that, as you said, that can kind of be a scary thing because water, as you said, to a young child, that's a big thing. And so to have that situation going on, I always try to advise parents to, when they're traveling, kind of steer clear of, if you have young children,
Yeah.
if you're going to take them to the pool as part of, your hotel experience, just try to make sure you stay at the same hotel, versus various hotels, because sometimes the setup is similar and that can help them feel a sense of familiarity with everything. Um, I myself, I never took my children to hotel pools. That just wasn't my thing. But that is something that, as you said, is absolutely true. That, the younger you are, you're going into this new place with all this water that can be, very intimidating for you. And with your pictures that you use, the graphics that you use in your book, it tells that story. It jumps out on the page at you, and you can feel those emotions coming through in your graphics that you use. I know that you do believe that a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, with graphic novels and comics, do you see these being used as an educational tool in the classroom very soon?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's so many great graphic novels and comic books that are used as teaching tools because they're a very immediate way to put yourself in a character's situation in a very artful way to get across the feeling. So, like in Swim Team, for example, until Bree gets comfortable with the pool, every time she's in a pool, you'll notice there's almost no background. It's just a vast sea of like this kid in
Right,
this giant ocean, right? And only after she gets comfortable with the pool does she start noticing, oh, the tiles are actually just right there. The railings just right there. So,
right,
and through the art, I could capture the feeling of what it feels like. Because in reality, the tile's there, the edge is there, but it doesn't feel like that when you fall into it and you're completely unfamiliar with it. So that way we can connect in a very emotional way to the truth of that experience and how it feels, but then also show in a gentle way, like, oh, actually, the fact of the situation is that there are things around. So if you do it in a safe way, then hopefully, little by little, we can get our young people in this you know this environment in a safe way. And but yeah, graphic novels. I remember I read Mouse about the Holocaust. It was a graphic novel I read, I think, back in high school, which was really interesting because it was the same thing. It was your from the uh, viewpoint of the main character, who was a son telling the story of his dad who survived, and they were portrayed as these little mice. But it was like this really gentle way in to this really hard story, and it was educational in a empathetic way. It wasn't just like reading a book about like facts and figures and this happened and that happened. It's, oh, all of a sudden I'm this person in this world, now what do I do? So I think graphic novels have this, since they have this beautiful beautiful immediacy. Like when Lucy pulls the ball out, when Charlie Brown tries to kick it, like, you know exactly how he feels when he tries to get that ball and he can't get that ball. And it's a really powerful tool for empathy in that way. And I think empathy is a really great way to learn. Because if it's just facts and figures, a lot of time it can go over your head. You can kind of like zone out. But if we can place people in a situation, I think they understand the situation a lot better, and they understand what would they do were they in that situation, and then they understand the plight of other people a lot better because they can see themselves reflected in the lives of someone else.
Absolutely. And we know that, those graphic novels do exist for, the tried and true teachings in school, like you said, such as the Holocaust and historical events, things like that, to now have graphic novels be introduced to situations that touch more upon the actual student, the student's life, and
Yeah.
things that they may be experiencing. That can be very, very critical and beneficial for kids. Something like swimming. That's not something that's really taught or really introduced. In a typical classroom environment. You have your world history, your English, things of that nature.
Right.
But there's nothing, there's nothing we're starting to get more and more novels, graphic novels that can reach young readers for things that they are going through in that space and time. Something as personal as swimming, as personal
Yeah.
as sleeping, things of that, trouble sleeping, things of that nature. So I'm just very grateful for you doing this novel to help young readers explore not only how they may feel about swimming, but also the difficult themes that you address in the book too, like race and inclusion and those stereotypes. It's just a wonderful book from beginning to end. And I just really appreciate you doing it for young readers through the summer. Now, we are talking about summer, so I have to ask you, what advice or words of wisdom would you like to give to your young reading audience for this summer as they go into the end of the school year and into summer?
I would say have fun. Like have fun. We've all gone through a very challenging couple of years, especially our young people, and being uh, not having the way of interacting that many of us in the past had the privilege and pleasures of. So if you get to have fun with your friends, really really savor it. The other thing I'd like to say to our young readers, and it was one of the messages in Swim Team, is that you don't have to be good at everything right away. Like everything takes time and trial and effort, and it doesn't have to be absolute with anything. Like you could just enjoy your way into a thing. Like be comfortable with it. Like Bree does with the pool. It doesn't have to. Then it becomes your swimming experience. It becomes your experience playing, any sport or singing or whatever you like to do. But approach anything that you might want to enjoy or might be curious about, and don't be discouraged if you're not great at it right away. But you can keep coming back to it, and you'll find guaranteed you'll get better at it each and every time. And then it becomes yours, and then when it becomes yours, then it becomes very special.
Perfect. I love that advice. Thank you for that. And I want to let everyone know that you can pick up the book Swim Team, Small Waves, Big Changes by Johnnie Christmas. It's available everywhere books are sold. And definitely get this for your kids for reading over the summer. They will absolutely love it. Let us know, Johnnie, where can people find you across social media to keep up with everything that you're doing?
Sure. Yeah, I'm on johnnychristmas.com, Johnny with an IE. And I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram's Johnny Xmas. I'm on Twitter at J_Xmas. That's right. There's an underscore in there. Yeah, I know. I got it later, what have you. But yeah, I'm on Twitter as well. I'm pretty easy to find if you Google Johnny with an IE Christmas. I'm all over the place.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I want to thank you again for joining me today to talk about not only your book, but this important topic as we head into the summer. I know that our parents, as well as our young readers, are going to appreciate all of the words of wisdom you gave today, as well as your book that you have created. Thank you again. And I just want to wish you a wonderful summer and much success in all of your future endeavors. Thank you
All
for
right.
joining me.
Thanks so much, Makiba, and thanks for having me, and thanks for your wonderful questions and shining a light on this important topic. And so that I don't know how to. I'm not a great lifeguard or anything like that, but I grew up with each one teach one. What I do know how to do is tell stories, and hopefully I could help in this area by the one thing I do know how to do.
Yes.
To help our young people. So thank you so much for this. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.